Commander Racton pressed his clawed hands against the cold metal railing of his ship's bridge. Through the massive viewing window, he could see the small blue and green planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Earth looked so peaceful, so quiet. It was hard to believe this tiny world would soon belong to the mighty Valkyrie Empire. The bridge around him buzzed with activity. Dozens of Valkyrie officers worked at their stations, their gray skin gleaming under the bright lights. Their long fingers moved quickly over glowing control panels, preparing for what should be the easiest conquest in their military history. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Velinor from across the bridge. His voice carried the excitement of a young soldier about to win his first real battle. "Our scout ships have finished their reports. The humans have almost no defenses. We count maybe 20 small space stations and a few hundred patrol ships. Nothing that could stop us." Racton's mouth twisted into what his species called a smile, though it looked more like a snarl to human eyes. His sharp teeth gleamed as he thought about how simple this would be. The Valkyrie had conquered 17 different worlds in the past 10 years. Each victory had been easier than the last. His humans would be no different. "How many of them live down there?" he asked, gesturing toward the planet with one of his 4 arms. "About 8 billion, Velinor replied, checking his data screen. "But Admiral, their technology is so primitive. They have barely learned to travel between planets. Most of their ships cannot even leave their own solar system. This will be over before lunch." The other officers on the bridge made clicking sounds with their mandibles. In Valkyrie culture, this was the equivalent of laughter. They all thought this mission was going to be a joke. Racton had been fighting wars for 30 years. He had seen civilizations fall before the might of Valkyrie weapons. He had watched proud alien leaders beg for mercy as their worlds burned. But something about this felt different. The humans had been too easy to find. Their planet had no real defenses. It was almost like they wanted to be discovered. But those thoughts were for philosophers, not soldiers. Racton had a job to do. "Begin the attack," he commanded. "Target their major cities first. Want them to know we are serious." K flagship, a massive ship the size of a small city, turned its weapons toward Earth. Behind it, 9,000 other warships did the same. The combined firepower of the fleet could destroy entire continents. Bright bolts of superheated plasma shot out from the Valkyrie ships. The energy beams were so hot they glowed white hot as they traveled through space. Each one carried enough power to level a mountain. Dozens of them streaked toward the helpless planet below. But then something impossible happened. Ships appeared out of nowhere. One moment, the space around Earth was empty, except for a few small patrol craft. The next moment, hundreds of sleek vessels materialized as if they had been invisible. They were unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever seen. The ships seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to look at directly. These new human ships moved with a grace that defied physics. They slipped between the plasma bolts like dancers avoiding raindrops. Then they fired back. The human weapons were nothing like the crude lasers and missiles the Valkyrie expected. Beams of pure energy lanced out from the mysterious ships, cutting through Valkyrie shields as if they were made of paper. The first wave of Valkyrie attackers simply vanished, turned to vapor in seconds. "What is happening?" Racton shouted, his confident smile gone. "How are they doing this?" Lieutenant Velinor's hands shook as he tried to make sense of his instruments. "Sir, I am reading energy signatures unlike anything in our database. These ships are using technology we do not understand. And sir, there are more of them appearing every second." Indeed, more human ships kept materializing around Earth. Not dozens, but hundreds, then thousands. Each one was different, as if they came from different fleets, different worlds. Some were small and fast, darting between the Valkyrie ships like angry wasps. Others were massive, larger even than the Valkyrie flagship, their hulls gleaming with strange metals that seemed to shift color in the starlight, far below on Earth's surface. In a control room, buried deep beneath the city of Seoul, Captain Lee Min-ho sat calmly at his desk. The walls around him were covered with screens showing the battle raging in space above. His fingers moved smoothly across a holographic control panel, coordinating the planet's defenses with the skill of someone who had done this many times before. "The automated systems are working perfectly," he said to his aide, Lieutenant Park Soo-yang, who stood beside him, watching the displays. "The Valkyrie ships are having trouble adapting to our defensive patterns. Should we activate the offensive protocols?" Park asked, her young face serious with concentration. Min-ho shook his head slowly. "Not yet. Let them think they have a chance. Send a message to command instead. Tell them we have visitors who do not understand proper manners. Request permission to give them a proper education." As he spoke, more Valkyrie ships exploded in the darkness above. The great invasion that was supposed to last hours was turning into a massacre. But the real surprise was still to come. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of twisted metal and burning gas. Valkyrie warships that had once struck fear into the hearts of entire civilizations now drifted as broken hulks, their hulls torn open like crushed cans. The proud fleet that had arrived with such confidence was being picked apart piece by piece. Commander Racting gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that his claws left deep scratches in the metal. His yellow eyes, wide with disbelief, watched as another group of his ships simply vanished under the precise fire of the human vessels. These were not the desperate last shots of a dying world. This was controlled, methodical destruction, carried out with the casual efficiency of someone swatting flies. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. 7,000, sir," replied his tactical officer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe more. The human weapons are destroying our ships faster than our sensors can count." Damn, Racton's mind reeled. 7,000 ships. These were not just any ships either. These were battle-tested vessels that had burned the skies above 17 different worlds. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city, and the humans were destroying them like they meant nothing. "This cannot be happening," he muttered. "Our intelligence reports said they were barely out of their Stone Age. They said humans had only just learned to travel between planets. They said, ... sir." Communications Officer Zalmoth suddenly called out from his station. His gray face had gone completely pale, and his hands trembled as he worked his controls. "I am picking up human radio transmissions. You need to hear this. Put it on the main speakers," Racton ordered. The bridge filled with the sound of human voices speaking in their strange, soft language. But the Valkyrie translation computers quickly converted the words into something they could understand. "It's Earth Defense to Inner Worlds Command," came a calm female voice. "We have a situation here. Some aliens called the Valkyrie just tried to bomb our research stations. Request permission to activate full territorial defense protocols." Another voice, this one male and sounding almost bored, replied from somewhere far away. "Permission denied. Earth Defense. This is just a minor border incident. Handle it with local resources only. Do not escalate. Understood? Command. We will keep the response minimal." The transmission ended, leaving the Valkyrie bridge in stunned silence. Zalmoth's voice shook as he spoke. "Sir, I have been analyzing their signals. Earth is not sending these messages to other locations on Earth. They are sending them to other star systems. Many other star systems." Racton felt his blood turn to ice water in his veins. "What are you saying?" "The Earth is not their main world. It is just one colony among many. The humans are asking permission from their real government, which is located somewhere else, somewhere very far away. The truth hit Racton like a physical blow. If Earth was just a research colony, just a small outpost on the edge of human space, then what was the real human empire like? How many worlds did they control? How many ships did they have? Sir, Zalmuth continued, his voice growing more frightened with each word, I am detecting more human transmissions. They are calling this a minor incident. Okay? They're saying they will handle it with local forces only. Local forces only. The words echoed in Racton's mind. If this devastating fleet that was tearing his armada apart was just the local defense force for one small colony, then what would happen when the real human military arrived? Far away, on a world called New Prosperity, Fleet Admiral Kim Jisoo stood in a command center that stretched for miles underground. Holographic displays showed her the positions of human fleets across dozens of star systems. Each dot of light represented thousands of ships, entire armadas that dwarfed the force that was currently destroying the Valkyrie. She was a small woman with short, black hair and calm, dark eyes. She wore a simple, gray uniform with no decorations, except for a small badge that marked her as one of humanity's senior military commanders. Round her, hundreds of other officers worked at similar displays, coordinating the movements of humanity's vast space forces. Admiral, said Commander Choi Daeon as he approached with a data tablet in his hands. We have received a report from Earth. The Valkyrie have attacked our research colony there. Jisoo glanced at the report without much interest. Valkyrie, she said thoughtfully. I remember them. They conquered a few primitive worlds about 10 years ago. Made quite a lot of noise about it too. What are your orders, Admiral? Jisoo considered this for a moment. The Valkyrie attack was barely worth her attention. Earth's local defenses were already handling the situation quite well, but protocols were protocols. When someone attacked a human world, even a small research colony, there had to be a response. Send the first response fleet, she said finally. Nothing too dramatic. It's enough to make sure the Valkyrie understand their mistake. Choi nodded and made a note on his tablet. How many ships, Admiral? Oh, the usual, about 50,000. Should be enough. And Daeon, she added as her aide started to leave. Make sure they understand this is just a courtesy call. We do not want to frighten them too badly. As Choi walked away to carry out her orders, Jisoo turned back to her displays. Somewhere out there, the Valkyrie were about to learn what it meant to attack humanity. She almost felt sorry for them. The space around Earth began to shimmer and twist in ways that hurt to look at. Reality itself seemed to bend as massive shapes pushed their way into normal space from somewhere else entirely. The remaining Valkyrie ships, already battered and broken, watched in growing horror as humanity's true fleet began to arrive. The first wave of reinforcements was unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever seen. These were not ships in any sense they understood. They were floating cities, each one larger than the biggest Valkyrie space station. Their hulls seemed to be made of liquid metal that flowed and shifted constantly. Some parts of the ships appeared solid, while others looked like they existed in several dimensions at once. Commander Racton stared through his cracked view screen at the approaching giants. His remaining fleet of barely 300 ships looked like insects next to these newcomers. Each human vessel was easily 10 times the size of his flagship, and more kept arriving every few minutes. Donna, whispered Lieutenant Velinor, his voice filled with pure terror. Our sensors cannot get proper readings on those ships. It is like they are only half here. Indeed, the human vessels seemed to phase in and out of visible space. One moment, they would be solid and clearly defined. The next moment, they would become ghostly and transparent, as if they existed in some other reality that occasionally touched their own. How many are there? Racton asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. I count over 50,000, sir, and more are still arriving. 50,000. The number was so large, it had no meaning. The entire Valkyrie military had. fewer ships than that. These humans had sent more vessels to deal with one small border incident than most civilizations possessed in their entire space fleet. Suddenly, all the communication screens on the Valkyrie bridge activated at once. The image that appeared showed a human female with short black hair and calm, dark eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform and sat in what looked like a comfortable chair. Behind her, Racton could see dozens of other humans working at control stations. When she spoke, it was in perfect Valkyrie language, with no accent or mistakes. Her voice was soft and polite, but somehow more frightening than any battle cry. "This is Admiral Kim Jisoo of the Human Territorial Defense Force," she said. "You have attacked a human settlement. This is unacceptable behavior." Racton found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak. We did not know. Our intelligence said Earth was undefended." The human admiral's expression did not change. She continued speaking in the same calm, reasonable tone. "You have precisely one standard day to withdraw all your remaining forces beyond the Outer Rim. This is your only warning." "The Outer Rim," Racton sputtered. "That is 3 sectors away from here. That would mean abandoning half our territory." "Yes," the admiral replied simply. "Or we will demonstrate why 47 different alien species maintain non-aggression pacts with humanity." Ctan's pride flared up despite his fear. The Valkyrie had been warriors for 1,000 years. They had never retreated from anyone. "You are bluffing," he snarled, though his voice shook as he said it. "No one species could control that much space." The human woman smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Racton had ever seen. The expression was cold and empty, like looking into the eyes of a predator that was deciding whether you were worth eating. "Commander Racton of the 3rd Valkyrie Warfleet," she said, and his blood froze when he heard his own name. "Serial number VK7739 Delta, 43 years old. Born on Velcro's Prime in the city of Carthan. Your mate is named Silvara, and you have 2 children, ages 7 and 12. Racton's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his command chair. This human, sitting light years away, knew more about him than some of his own officers did. The admiral continued in the same pleasant tone. "We know your service record. We know about the civilian populations you bombed on Kepler 442 and Roswell 128. We know about your family's home address on Velcro's Prime. We know what school your children attend." How Racton whispered, "This is not a bluff, Commander. This is a courtesy. We are giving you the chance to leave peacefully because we prefer not to waste resources on unnecessary violence. But make no mistake, if you force us to take action, we will do so with the same thoroughness we apply to everything else." The transmission ended, leaving the Valkyrie bridge in stunned silence. Around them, the massive human ships continued to arrive, their impossible hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's sun down on Earth's surface. Captain Lee Minho watched the displays in his underground command center. The Valkyrie fleet was already beginning to move away from Earth, their ships limping toward the edge of the solar system as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. Lieutenant Park Soo-young stood beside him, monitoring the retreat. "Sir, should we pursue them? Make sure they actually leave our space." Minho shook his head slowly. "No need. They understand now. Besides, we want them to go home and tell everyone what they saw here. Word will spread. What if other species think we are weak for letting them go?" Minho smiled grimly. "Let them think that. The smart ones will realize we let them go because we could afford to. The stupid ones will make the same mistake the Valkyrie did. Either way, the galaxy will learn." The news traveled faster than the fastest starship, across the galaxy. On hundreds of different worlds, alien leaders received the same impossible report. The mighty Valkyrie Dominion, conquerors of 17 star systems, had been crushed in a single day by a species most had never heard of in the trading posts of the Centauri sector. Merchants whispered about the battle over Earth. They spoke in hushed voices about ships that could appear from nowhere and weapons that cut through Valkyrie armor like it was made of cloth. The story grew with each telling, but even the wildest versions fell short of the truth. On the industrial world of Kepler Prime, the Zephyrian Council held an emergency meeting. They had been allies with the Valkyrie for over 50 years, sharing technology and trade routes. Now they faced a terrible choice. "We must cut all ties with them immediately," declared Council Leader Vextar, his blue skin pale with fear. "If these humans decide the Valkyrie are our responsibility, we could be next." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Species that had once feared Valkyrie warships now treated them like carriers of a deadly plague. Trade agreements that had lasted for decades were canceled overnight. Diplomatic embassies were closed. Border checkpoints slammed shut, leaving Valkyrie ships stranded on the wrong side of space. Commander Rakton sat in his damaged flagship, watching his empire die through a series of urgent messages that flooded his communication systems. Each report brought worse news than the last, said Lieutenant Velinor, his voice heavy with despair. "The Antarian Federation has closed their borders to all Valkyrie ships. They're also demanding immediate payment for all outstanding debts." The Rigel Trading Consortium. "They have canceled our shipping contracts and seized our cargo vessels in their space as payment for damages." Rakton closed his eyes. The Valkyrie economy depended on trade with other species. Without access to foreign markets, their colonies would begin to starve within months. But the worst reports were yet to come. "Sir," Velinor continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "we are receiving reports from across our territory. Human ships have appeared in our systems." "What?" Rakton's eyes snapped open. "Are they attacking?" "No, sir. They are just ... watching our commander's report. Small human vessels appearing near our worlds, scanning everything, then disappearing. Again, they make no hostile moves, but they do not respond to our communications either." The reports came in steadily over the following days. Human scout ships, sleek and silent, materialized in Valkyrie space like ghosts. They would spend hours studying Valkyrie defenses, mapping their cities, recording their military installations. Then they would simply vanish, only to appear somewhere else a few hours later. "They're not even trying to hide," reported intelligence Officer Zalmuth during one of their daily briefings. In fact, they seem to want us to see them. Our sensor operators say the human ships are easy to detect when they want to be, almost invisible when they do not." "What are they doing?" Rakton asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "They are learning everything about us, sir. Every ship, every base, every weakness. They are mapping our entire civilization." The psychological effect was devastating. Valkyrie military commanders lived in constant fear, never knowing when a human ship might appear in their system. Some bases reported their crews refusing to leave their quarters. Others simply abandoned their posts entirely. Meanwhile, on the human world of New Sol, Intelligence Director Yoon Jae-won worked quietly in an office that looked more like a library than a military facility. The walls were lined with data storage, units containing information about thousands of different alien species. Each unit held detailed files on their technology, their military capabilities, their culture, and their weaknesses. Yoon was a small, thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been studying alien civilizations for over 30 years, compiling the vast database that helped humanity stay ahead of potential threats. The Valkyrie were just the latest addition to his collection. "Its director," said his assistant, Lieutenant Kim Ha-young, as she placed a thick folder on his desk. "The Valkyrie analysis is complete." Yoon opened the folder and scanned through the reports. Ship designs, weapon specifications, population centers, trade routes. Everything the human scouts had observed was cataloged in precise detail. He made a few notes in the margins, then closed the file. Standard evaluation complete, he said into his communication device. The Valkyrie pose no significant threat to human interests. Recommend continued monitoring. The reply came from Director Nam Yoonji, his superior in the Human Intelligence Service. Her voice was calm and professional. Agreed. File it under minor territorial disputes, NJ1. Add them to the list of species requiring ongoing observation. Yu nodded and made the appropriate entries in his computer system. The Valkyrie were now officially classified as a minor nuisance, worthy of occasional attention but not serious concern. Their file would be updated regularly, but they were no longer considered important enough to warrant active intervention. In a storage room deep beneath the building, a robotic filing system located the appropriate section and inserted the Valkyrie folder between similar files on the Zephyrians and the Altarians. It was a thick section containing detailed information on 47 different species that had learned to fear humanity's power. The galaxy was a large place, but humanity kept track of everyone. 10 years had passed since the day the Valkyrie learned what real power looked like. The once mighty dominion that had ruled 17 star systems was now nothing more than a handful of forgotten worlds scattered along the edge of known space. Their great war fleets had been sold for scrap metal or converted into cargo ships that carried food and medicine to their struggling colonies on Velcro's prime. The Valkyrie homeworld, the morning sun, cast long shadows across the plaza of remembrance. But the crowds that gathered there each day did not come to remember their past glories. They came to give thanks for something far more precious than victory. They came to give thanks for being ignored. The Temple of Eternal Watching stood in the center of the plaza, its crystal walls reflecting the pale light of their dying sun. Inside, thousands of Valkyrie knelt on the cold stone floor, their heads bowed in prayer. At the front of the temple, former Admiral Rakton led the daily ritual that had become the most important ceremony in their culture. Rakton was no longer the proud military commander who had once dreamed of conquest. 10 years of shame and fear had aged him terribly. His once bright yellow eyes were now dim and tired. His gray skin was marked with deep lines of worry. But his voice was still strong when he spoke the words that every Valkyrie knew by heart. "We give thanks for human mercy," he said, his voice echoing through the temple. Around him, thousands of other voices joined in. "We give thanks for human patience. We pray that we remain beneath their notice." The prayer continued for nearly an hour, as it did every morning across Valkyrie space, in temples on every world, in ships traveling between systems, in homes, in schools, and government buildings. The Valkyrie spoke the same words. They had replaced their old gods with a new fear, a new reverence for the species that had shown them how small they really were. "We promise to stay in our assigned territory," the voices chanted. "We promise to harm no other species. We promise to remember our place in the galaxy." Young Valkyrie children, born after the failed invasion, learned these prayers before they learned to read. They grew up knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, humanity watched and waited. They learned that their people's survival depended on remaining small, quiet, and harmless. But the humans were not actively watching the Valkyrie anymore. In the depths of space, far from any star, Station Omega-7 drifted silently through the cosmic void. It was one of hundreds of similar installations scattered throughout the galaxy, automated listening posts that monitored the communications and movements of dozens of different alien species. Captain Park Ji-hoon sat in the station's command center, reviewing the daily intelligence reports on his computer screen. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes, the sort of person who might have been a teacher or a shopkeeper in another life. Instead, He spent his days keeping track of civilizations that most humans had never heard of, Sri said. Lieutenant Song Hana, as she approached his desk with a data tablet. The weekly summary is ready for your review. Park took the tablet and scanned through the reports. The Valkyrie were maintaining their isolation protocols. The Zephyrian Council was still refusing all contact with outsiders. The Rigel Trading Consortium had successfully negotiated new peace treaties with 3 neighboring species. All normal, all boring, all exactly as it should be. Any problems? He asked. None, sir. All 47 monitored species remain within acceptable behavioral parameters. No aggressive actions, no territorial expansions, no violations of established boundaries. Park nodded and signed the report. Good. File it with the others, guys. Song walked away. Park turned back to his computer screen. His job was important, but it was also routine. These alien species had learned their lessons years ago. They knew better than to cause trouble that might attract human attention. The truth was, humanity had moved on. The galaxy was vast, and there were always new frontiers to explore, new worlds to discover, new challenges to face. Abel, Kari, and species like them were relics of the past, cautionary tales that helped keep the peace but were no longer worth much active thought, far beyond the outer rim. Human exploration fleets pushed deeper into uncharted space. They found new worlds with strange life forms, ancient ruins left by civilizations that had died out millions of years ago. Occasionally, new species that had never encountered humanity before. Some of these new species were friendly, others were hostile. All of them eventually learned the same lesson that the Valkyrie had learned back on Velcro's prime. The morning prayers were ending. Rakton rose slowly from his knees, his old joints aching from the long ceremony. Around him, the other worshippers began to file out of the temple, returning to their daily lives of quiet survival. As he walked toward the temple's exit, Rakton paused at a memorial wall covered with the names of Valkyrie, who had died in the failed invasion. 7,000 ships. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, all lost in a single day because they had made the mistake of attacking a species they did not understand. He touched one of the names on the wall, Lieutenant Velinor, who had been so young, so confident that victory would be easy. Then he whispered, a personal prayer, one that was not part of the official ceremony. Thank you for letting us live. Thank you for teaching us wisdom. Thank you for showing us mercy we did not deserve. Then he walked out into the sunlight, grateful beyond measure that another day had passed without humanity remembering that the Valkyrie existed